She's not coming here to apologize, Caleb. She's coming because you left her with nothing and somehow you still think she owes you shame. Sloane said it with a laugh, like cruelty was just another party trick, and Caleb Hartwell smiled, as if he had earned the right to enjoy it. 42 floors above downtown Atlanta, his rooftop launch party glittered like proof that he had won. The city stretched around him in clean lines of glass, traffic lights and expensive promises. Waiters moved through the crowd with champagne flutes. A jazz trio played near the terrace doors. Investors shook hands under warm gold lighting, and everyone kept saying the same thing. Hartwell Living Group had finally arrived. Caleb stood at the center of it all in a navy-tailored suit, one hand in his pocket, the other wrapped around Sloane Pierce's waist. He looked calm, polished, untouchable. The kind of man who knew exactly where to stand when cameras were nearby. "She'll come," he told Sloane, glancing toward the private elevator. "Maya always comes when I leave the door open." Sloane tilted her head, blonde hair shining under the lights. "That's sweet." Sad but sweet. A few guests nearby chuckled. Caleb did not correct them. He wanted them to hear it. He wanted the room to believe Maya Whitfield was still orbiting him, still hoping for a kind word, still broken enough to show up at his celebration and beg for a little dignity back. 11 months earlier, he had watched her leave their condo with 2 suitcases, a box of kitchen plates, and the old leather notebook she used to carry to every one of his meetings. Back then, Maya had been quiet, too quiet in Caleb's opinion. She did not scream in the lobby. She did not make a scene for the doorman. She just stood there, a black woman in a gray coat, holding herself together while he told her, "You helped me get here, Maya, but you don't belong here anymore." He had made it as a final sentence. Tonight, he planned to turn it into a public victory. The rooftop lounge, the penthouse offices, the whole Bellamy Crest building had become the crown on his new life. Sloane was part of that crown too, smiling beside him in a silver dress, already practicing the role of the woman who replaced the wife everyone said had been too serious, too sensitive, too hard to impress. Caleb checked his phone again. The message he had sent Maya sat there, delivered and unanswered. "Come by tonight. We can talk like adults." He smirked at the screen. She read it. Of course she did, Sloane said. Women like that always want closure. Caleb lifted his glass, ready to make a toast, ready to tell the room how some people move forward while others stayed stuck in the past. Then the private elevator chimed, soft, polite, almost easy to miss, but somehow the sound cut through the music, through the laughter, through Caleb's perfect little kingdom. The door slid open and Maya Whitfield stepped out. She was not crying. She was not dressed like someone asking for mercy. She wore a cream suit, simple heels, and a calm expression that made the whole room feel suddenly overdressed. Beside her walked a man Caleb did not recognize, older, steady, carrying a brown leather envelope under one arm. For the first time that night, Caleb's smile slipped just enough for Sloane to notice. Maya looked across the rooftop, past the champagne, past the cameras, past every person who had expected her to arrive small. Then her eyes found Caleb. She did not wave. She did not soften. She just walked toward him like a woman returning to a place that had never stopped belonging to her. Every step Maya took across that rooftop made the room quieter, and Caleb hated that most of all. He was used to silence meaning respect. Around him, people lowered their voices because he had money in the room, deals on the table, and the kind of confidence that made others second-guess themselves. But this silence was different. It did not belong to him. It followed Maya. Guests turned as she passed, some pretending not to stare, others failing completely. A few recognized her from old company events, back when she stood beside Caleb with a soft smile and a notebook full of numbers he later repeated as if they had come from his own mouth. Tonight she did not look like that woman. She was not dressed to compete with Sloane. She was not trying to sparkle under the rooftop lights. Her cream suit was clean, sharp, and almost plain, but it made every diamond in the room look like it was trying too hard. Caleb recovered his smile just before she reached him. "Maya," he said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "I'm glad you came." Sloane leaned into him, her smile sweet in the way a locked door can look polished. "We were just saying how brave this must be for you." Maya looked at Sloane for one calm second, then back at Caleb. Her face gave away almost nothing, but inside her chest tightened. She remembered this exact stretch of floor. She remembered standing near the bar months ago while Caleb introduced Sloane to investors as the woman who understood the brand. Maya had laughed softly then, because she thought being gracious would protect her. It did not. Grace had only made it easier for him to erase her. The man beside Maya stepped forward slightly, not in front of her, just close enough to remind Caleb she did not come alone. "Caleb Hartwell," Maya said. "This is Marcus Bellamy." Caleb glanced at him, then at the brown leather envelope tucked under Marcus's arm. "A lawyer?" he asked, chuckling. "That feels dramatic." Marcus gave him a polite nod. Sometimes paperwork feels dramatic when it arrives on time. A few people nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice light. "Maya, whatever this is, we can talk privately." "You invited me here," she said. "Not privately." Sloane let out a small laugh. Caleb was trying to be kind. He thought maybe you needed closure. Maya's fingers pressed once against the side of her purse, just enough to ground herself. She could still feel the old version of herself somewhere inside, the woman who would have explained, defended, apologized for taking up space. But that woman had spent too many nights replaying Caleb's words until they lost their power. Maya looked at him and said, "I did not come for closure." Caleb gave the room a half smile, the kind he used when a meeting was slipping, but he wanted everyone to believe he had planned it that way. "Then what did you come for?" Maya did not answer right away. She turned her gaze toward the glass walls of the penthouse lounge, the marble bar, the terrace lights, the office doors with his company name etched in silver. Caleb watched her look around and mistook it for longing. That was his first mistake. Maya reached for the brown leather envelope, took it from Marcus herself, and placed it on the champagne table between them. Her hand was steady now. "Open it," she said. "You should read this before you make your toast." For 3 seconds, Caleb did not touch the envelope. He just looked at it sitting on the champagne table like it had insulted him by existing. Around him, the rooftop had gone strangely still. The jazz trio kept playing, but even the music sounded careful now, softer, like it knew something in the room had shifted. Sloane folded her arms and gave Maya a thin smile. "Really, Maya? Documents?" At his launch party. Caleb let out a quiet laugh, forcing warmth into it. "It is fine. This is probably some misunderstanding she brought from a divorce forum." A few guests chuckled, but not as many as he expected. Maya said nothing. That bothered him more than any argument could have. The old Maya would have rushed to explain. She would have said she was sorry for interrupting. She would have lowered her voice so no one felt uncomfortable. But this Maya stood with both hands relaxed at her sides, her eyes steady, her breathing slow. Caleb picked up the envelope at last. "Since you came all this way," he said, looking around as though the room belonged to him, "we might as well give you the attention you came for." He slid one finger beneath the flap and pulled out the papers. The first page caught the light from the terrace lamps. His smile stayed in place for half a second too long, then began to die at the edges. Sloane leaned closer. "What is it?" Caleb did not answer. His eyes moved across the page once, then back to the top, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less embarrassing. "Notice to vacate. Unauthorized occupancy. Whitfield Holdings Trust. Maya Denise Whitfield, authorized representative." He swallowed and the sound was small, but Maya heard it. So did Marcus. "This is fake," Caleb said too quickly. Marcus took one calm step forward. "It is not. I leased this property through Hartwell Living Group." "You leased portions of it," Marcus replied. Past tense. "The operating agreement expired 90 days ago. Your attorney received 3 notices. Your office acknowledged 2. Caleb's face tightened. "I never saw those." Maya finally spoke. "You did. You told your assistant to bury anything with my last name on it." The sentence landed quietly, but it landed hard. One of the investors near the bar turned to another and whispered. A reporter by the terrace lowered her glass and reached for her phone. Caleb noticed and lifted his hand, trying to bring the room back under control. "Everyone relax. This is a personal matter." "No," Maya said. "It became a business matter the minute you used property you did not control to raise money you had no right to ask for." Sloane's face changed. The smile was still there, but it had gone stiff like a mask held in place by pride. "Caleb," she whispered, "tell me she is confused." He shot her a look that said not now. But Sloane had already felt the floor move beneath her expensive heels. Caleb turned back to Maya, lowering his voice. "You need to be very careful." For a moment, the old fear brushed the back of Maya's neck. She remembered that tone. Calm, private, sharpened just for her. It used to make her shrink. Tonight, her hand did not shake. She looked at the paper in his hand, then at the crowd watching him pretend he was not afraid. "I was careful," she said. "That is why you are reading it instead of hearing about it from a judge." Marcus opened his tablet and tapped the screen. Behind Caleb, the large display that had been looping glossy images of the Bellamy crest flickered once. The luxury renderings vanished. In their place appeared a property deed, a trust certificate, and Caleb's company name under expired access rights. The whispers spread faster now. Caleb turned toward the screen, color draining from his face. The building he had spent all night calling his legacy had another name buried underneath it. And for the first time, the whole room could see whose name it was. Long before that screen exposed the truth, Maya had been the woman standing behind Caleb, while everyone else learned his name. She met him when Hartwell Living Group was still 3 people sharing a rented office above a dry cleaner in Midtown, with a coffee maker that leaked and a conference table they found on Facebook Marketplace. Caleb had vision, charm, and a voice that made small ideas sound expensive. But Maya had the patience to turn those ideas into something people could actually trust. She stayed up past midnight cleaning his investor deck, fixing numbers that did not add up, rewriting emails so they sounded confident instead of desperate. On Saturdays, while her friends were at brunch, she drove across Atlanta with him, walking half-empty buildings, taking notes on parking, foot traffic, lighting, neighborhood history. Caleb used to squeeze her hand and say, "You see things I miss, Maya." Back then, she believed him. She believed marriage meant building something side by side, even when only one person got applause. When their first real deal almost collapsed, Maya pulled $12,000 from her own savings money she had put aside for a graduate program she kept promising herself she would start. Caleb cried in their kitchen that night, holding the bank receipt like it was a lifeline. "I will never forget this," he told her. For a while maybe he meant it. Then the company grew. The office moved downtown. The suits got sharper. The dinners got longer. Caleb learned to say my strategy when he meant their late-night conversations, and my team when he meant the wife sitting at home fixing no one saw. Maya noticed the shift slowly, the way a person notices cold air slipping under a door. First, he stopped asking her to come to meetings. Then he started saying investors wanted a cleaner image, something more polished, less personal. When Sloan Pierce arrived as a public relations consultant, Caleb introduced her with a brightness Maya had not heard in his voice in months. Sloan knew how to laugh at the right men, touch the right arms, and make Caleb feel like he belonged in rooms he had once been afraid to enter. Maya tried not to resent her. She told herself jealousy was ugly, and she had no reason to be jealous if her marriage was solid. But every week, Caleb came home carrying more of Sloan's opinions and less of Maya's. He changed the logo Maya had helped sketch. He replaced the company language she had written. Then, one afternoon, Maya opened a brochure for the Bellamy crest and saw Caleb's story printed in glossy black letters. Self-made founder, sole visionary, built from nothing. She read that sentence 3 times at the kitchen counter while the dishwasher hummed beside her. Built from nothing. Her throat tightened, not because she wanted credit from strangers, but because her own husband had turned her sacrifices into empty space. When she asked him about it, Caleb sighed like she had interrupted something important. "This is why I do not involve you anymore," he said. "You make everything emotional." That became his favorite word for her. Emotional when she asked questions. Emotional when she wanted respect. Emotional when she noticed Sloane's perfume on his jacket after a late strategy dinner. By the night he placed her suitcase by the front door, Maya was not surprised. Heartbroken, yes. Embarrassed, yes. But not surprised. Caleb stood in the living room of the condo she had helped furnish, looking past her instead of at her. "You helped me get here," he said, calm enough to sound rehearsed. "But you do not belong here anymore." Maya's hand closed around the handle of the suitcase. Her palm was damp. Her chest felt so tight she could barely breathe. Still, she did not beg. She only looked at the man she had built beside and realized he had not just stopped loving her. He had started editing her out of his life while she was still standing in the room. For the first 2 weeks after Caleb put her out, Maya slept on her aunt's pull-out sofa in Decatur and told everyone she was fine because fine was easier than explaining how empty a person could feel while still breathing. Aunt Rochelle did not push her. She just left coffee on the kitchen counter every morning, extra blankets folded on the chair, and quiet space around Maya's grief like it was something sacred. During the day, Maya answered emails from a folding table by the window and tried to rebuild a life small enough to manage. At night, when the apartment got quiet and the air conditioner clicked on and off, she opened the cardboard boxes Caleb had let her take. Most of it was nothing. Old tax forms, vendor invoices, copies of design notes he probably thought were useless because they were in her handwriting. There was a grocery receipt tucked inside a folder from the first year of their marriage, and for some reason that nearly broke her. She remembered standing in line with Caleb, counting dollars, laughing because they could only afford pasta, chicken thighs, and one cheap bottle of wine. Back then, struggle felt like a season. She had never imagined it would become evidence. One rainy Thursday evening, Maya found a thick folder labeled Bellamy Crest Preliminary Files. She almost tossed it aside. The name made her stomach twist. That building had become Caleb's favorite symbol of himself. The proof he gave in interviews that he had turned forgotten Atlanta real estate into luxury living. But a small note clipped to the back caught her eye. Original land transfer. She sat up straighter. The paper was old, copied too many times, the ink faded at the edges. Still, one name stood out clearly enough to stop her breathing. Arthur James Bellamy, her grandfather. Maya read it once, then again, her fingers going cold. Around the page, her mother had spoken of Arthur Bellamy as a proud man who owned property when men like him were not expected to own anything that mattered. Family stories said he had lost most of it through bad contracts, quiet discrimination, and partners who smiled while taking more than they promised. Maya had grown up thinking those stories were just history, painful but finished. This did not look finished. By morning, she was sitting across from Marcus Bellamy in a modest law office near Cascade Road. The folder between them and her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee she had not touched. Marcus was her mother's cousin, the kind of man who spoke slowly because he had spent 30 years watching fast talkers make expensive mistakes. He read the documents without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair and took off his glasses. "Maya," he said, "where did you get this?" "From Caleb's files." Her voice came out thin. "Is it real?" Marcus looked at the folder again, then at her. "It appears your grandfather's trust was never properly dissolved. The land beneath Bellamy Crest was transferred into a holding structure, but the controlling interest may still belong to the family line." Maya stared at him. "That building is Caleb's whole company." "No," Marcus said gently. "That building is his stage. That is not the same as ownership." The words moved through her slowly, too big to feel like relief. Maya pressed one hand to her chest and tried to steady her breathing. She did not smile. She did not think of revenge. Not yet. She thought of Caleb saying she did not belong there. She thought of every glossy brochure that called him self-made. She thought of her grandfather's name buried under layers of paperwork, waiting for someone to care enough to read it. Marcus closed the folder with care. "We need time. We need title records, lease agreements, notices, everything. And Maya, listen to me. Do not warn him. Do not argue with him. Let the documents speak first." Maya nodded, though her eyes burned. For the first time since the divorce, silence did not feel like defeat. It felt like preparation. Back on the rooftop, the screen still glowed behind Caleb with the kind of truth no smile could soften. For a moment no one moved. The Bellamy Crest renderings were gone, replaced by pages Caleb had hoped would stay buried in filing cabinets, email threads, and ignored legal notices. His company name sat there in plain black letters under expired access rights. And beneath it, in a place no one in the room could miss, was Maya's full name. Maya Denise Whitfield. Caleb stared at the screen, then turned back to the crowd with a laugh that sounded too sharp to be casual. "This is ridiculous," he said. lifting both hands like a man calming a misunderstanding at a dinner table. Everyone, please enjoy the party. My ex-wife has always had a flair for timing. A few people looked away, uncomfortable. No one laughed this time. Sloane stepped beside him, trying to rescue the mood with that glossy confidence she wore like perfume. Maya, this is not the way to handle personal pain, she said, loud enough for Vivian Rhodes and the other investors to hear. You could have called. You could have asked for a meeting like an adult. Maya felt the old sting under her ribs. There it was again, the same trick in nicer clothes. Make her look emotional. Make her look bitter. Make her look like a woman who could not accept being left. Caleb caught the opening and took it. Maya had a hard time after the divorce, he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound concerned. I have tried to be respectful of that, but this is a business event. These people did not come here to watch a personal breakdown. The words landed around her like smoke, not solid but meant to cloud the room. Maya's fingers curled once, then relaxed. Her heart was beating hard, but her face stayed still. She thought about Aunt Rochelle's sofa. She thought about Marcus telling her to let the documents speak first. She thought about every time Caleb had called her emotional because the truth made him uncomfortable. Marcus tapped the tablet again. A new file opened on the screen. For clarity, he said, calm as a Sunday morning, these are the notices sent to Hartwell Living Group over the past 90 days. Certified mail. Email confirmation. Receipt from Mr. Hartwell's executive assistant. All dated. All acknowledged. Caleb's mouth tightened. My staff handles hundreds of documents. Maya looked at him then. You told Brianna to archive anything with Whitfield or Bellamy in the subject line. She forwarded the instruction to legal by mistake. A quiet ripple moved through the crowd. Someone near the bar whispered, "Oh wow." Vivian Rhodes stepped closer to the screen, her expression changing from polite concern to investor-level alarm. Sloane's smile faded at the edges. Caleb pointed toward Marcus. Who even is this man to you? Family, Maya said. And counsel. Family, Caleb repeated with a cold little laugh. Convenient. Maya took one step forward, not fast, not dramatic, just enough that Caleb had to look at her instead of the room. No, Caleb. Convenient was using my work, my savings, and my silence until you thought I had nothing left to prove. This is documentation. The rooftop went so quiet that the soft clink of ice in someone's glass sounded loud. Caleb's face flushed, but he still tried to hold his ground. You are going to regret embarrassing me. For the first time that night, Maya almost smiled, not because she was happy, but because she finally understood how small his power had always been. It only worked when she was afraid to answer. I spent 11 months being careful, she said. Regret is not what brought me here. Behind her, Marcus opened the final page, the eviction notice enlarged across the screen. And as the room read the deadline together, Caleb reached for his phone with hands that no longer looked steady. Caleb turned away from the screen and called his attorney like a man reaching for the last solid thing in a room that had started to tilt. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. No one spoke while he waited. Even the jazz trio had stopped playing now, leaving only the low hum of the city beyond the glass railing and the soft rush of traffic 42 floors below. When his attorney finally answered, Caleb stepped toward the corner, but the rooftop was too quiet for privacy. Darren, I need you to tell me this is garbage, Caleb said, keeping his voice low and tight. He listened. His eyes flicked once toward Maya, then toward Marcus, then down to the eviction notice in his hand. No, tonight. They brought it here tonight. Another pause. Caleb's jaw shifted. What do you mean it is valid? Sloane heard that part. So did Vivian Rhodes. So did half the investors pretending not to listen. Caleb turned his harder as if a different angle could hide the truth, but there was no hiding. A man losing control in public. Darren's voice buzzed faintly through the speaker. Not loud enough for every word, but loud enough for Caleb's face to change. The notices had been served correctly. The operating agreement had expired. Hartwell Living Group had no current legal right to use the penthouse offices, the rooftop lounge, or the private event space without approval from Whitfield Holdings Trust. If Caleb refused to comply, Maya could seek a court order and trigger a deeper review of every funding package tied to the property. Caleb ended the call without saying goodbye. For a second he just stood there with the phone in his hand, staring at nothing. Then Vivian Rhodes stepped forward. She was in her late 50s, silver-haired, elegant, and known in Atlanta for cutting bad deals loose before they bled. She had not become powerful by being loud. She became powerful by asking the questions everyone else was afraid to ask. Caleb, she said, were you aware of any ownership dispute before presenting this property as a secured asset? Caleb turned back with the smile he used for negotiations, but it looked worn now, like a suit pulled from the bottom of a suitcase. Vivian, this is being exaggerated. My team will clear it up by morning. That was not my question. The room held its breath. Maya watched Caleb search for a better answer and find none. That was the strange thing about truth. People could dress it up, delay it, bury it under signatures and polished language, but when it finally stood in the room, it did not need to raise its voice. Sloane stepped closer to Caleb, then seemed to think better of it. Her hand hovered near his sleeve but did not touch it. Maya noticed. Caleb noticed, too, and the small betrayal of it flashed across his face. Sloane had loved standing beside him when he looked untouchable. Now that his image had cracked, she was suddenly careful about where the cameras were. Vivian turned to her assistant. Pause the funding review. Effective immediately. Caleb blinked. Vivian, you cannot be serious. I am very serious, she said. I invest in property, not confusion, not ego, and certainly not undisclosed legal exposure. A reporter near the terrace began typing fast on her phone. Two guests from a brokerage firm quietly moved toward the elevator. Across the room, someone pulled down a Hartwell Living Group banner before anyone had asked them to. Caleb saw it happen, and something in him seemed to fold inward. The night he built to prove he had outgrown Maya was becoming the night everyone learned he had built his new life on ground he did not own. Maya felt no rush of joy, only a deep, tired steadiness. She had wanted this moment for 11 months, but standing inside it did not feel like revenge. It felt like finally setting down a weight she should never have had to carry. Caleb looked at her then, really looked at her, not as a problem, not as a memory, not as the woman he thought he could manage. He looked at her like she had become the one person in the room who could still. Caleb stopped close enough for Maya to hear him without the whole room catching every word. Can we talk? He asked. It was almost funny how soft he could make his voice when power stopped working. Maya looked at Marcus. He gave her a small nod, not permission, just assurance. She followed Caleb a few steps away to the glass wall near the terrace, where the city lights spread behind him like a life he was suddenly afraid of losing. Caleb ran a hand over his jaw. Maya, do not do this tonight. She looked at him quietly. You invited me tonight. I did not invite you to destroy me. No, she said. You invited me because you thought I would be small enough to manage. His eyes flickered. For a second, the polished businessman disappeared and she saw the man from their old kitchen. The man who used to pace barefoot at midnight, terrified a bank would say no, holding printed spreadsheets she had made for him. She remembered loving that version of him so much it made her brave. She remembered believing that if they worked hard enough, kindness would survive success. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice again. We were married, Maya. Does that mean nothing to you? The question touched something old, but not the way he hoped. Her throat tightened and she had to breathe through it. It meant the unpaid bills she covered. It meant the nights she edited proposals while he slept. It meant standing beside him when no one returned his calls. It meant being slowly replaced and then blamed for noticing. It meant a lot to me, she said. That was the problem. Caleb swallowed. I made mistakes. Maya let out a quiet breath. You did not misplace my keys, Caleb. You erased my name. He looked over her shoulder at the guests watching in pieces, through reflections in the glass, and nervous glances across champagne tables. I can fix this. I can put you back into the company history. We can issue a statement. I will make sure people know you helped. The offer sat between them, late and insulting. Maya almost laughed, but it would have sounded too sad. You still think this is about credit? Then what do you want? He asked, frustration breaking through. Money. An apology. Tell me what number makes this go away. There it was. The man she divorced. The man who believed every wound had a price if he was the one writing the check. Maya looked at his face, searching for remorse, but all she found was fear dressed up as regret. I wanted the truth, she said. Back when it would have cost you nothing. Caleb's mouth opened, then closed. Behind him, Sloane glanced toward the elevator like she was measuring her exit. He saw it, too, and shame crossed his face so quickly Maya almost missed it. Please, he said, and the words sounded strange coming from him. If this deal dies, everything I built is gone. Maya held his gaze. Everything you built. Caleb looked down. For the first time, he did not have an answer ready. Maya turned slightly toward the room where everyone waited to see whether she would soften, explode, or disappear. Her heart was still beating hard, but it was steady now. She no longer needed him to admit he had done in order for it to be real. I am not here to ruin your life, she said. I am here to stop letting you use mine as the foundation. Then she walked back toward Marcus, leaving Caleb by the glass with the apology he had wanted from her still nowhere in sight. Maya returned to the center of the rooftop, and this time nobody tried to laugh. The room that had welcomed Caleb like a king now watched him from a distance, as if his confidence had been a costume and everyone had just seen the zipper. Marcus stood beside Maya with the tablet in his hand, but he did not speak for her. He did not need to. Maya looked at the faces around her, the investors, the brokers, the reporters, the employees who had come expecting a celebration, and were now trying to understand whether their jobs had just become part of someone else's lie. That was the part Caleb would never have thought about. He only cared about being embarrassed. Maya cared about what happened after the lights turned off. She took a breath and said, "This notice applies to Heart Living Group's unauthorized use of the penthouse offices, the rooftop lounge, and the private event space. Employees who work in this building will be given information about temporary access and transition support. No one here will be punished for decisions they did not make. A young woman near the bar, one of Caleb's assistants, pressed her lips together like she was trying not to cry. Maya noticed her. She remembered being that woman once, carrying someone else's chaos, and being expected to smile.